Year's over. What was good? So, 2018 behind us, it is time for me to give my top 10 of the movies that I saw from 2018. And yeah, you know what? We will just jump right into it. Number 10 is a movie that I actually almost did not get around to seeing because I saw the trailers, I knew the premise, and I thought this is going to be the most insufferable friggin' thing ever. I don't want to see it. But then I saw it, and while it is not amazing, I did have a lot of fun with it. And that is Ready Player One. So, I think I was probably about a half hour into this movie when it clicked in my head exactly what it was that I was watching. Because I was having this struggle in my brain between the enjoyment I was having watching this and the stupidity of it. And then it clicked in my head, I know what this is. This is a young adult dystopia story for geeks in their 30s and 40s. And as soon as I clicked that into my head, like, if we don't require, Divergent or Twilight or, any of that, or, that entire subgenre to be masterworks of narrative, why would I require it of this? Then I was on the wavelength, then I was able to enjoy it, and yeah, it's fun. It's dumb, but it's fun. And seeing just the mashup of the different properties honestly did add a little bit of enjoyment. It wouldn't have worked if the story wasn't, didn't have decent momentum, and if Spielberg wasn't as good a director as he was. But since, the story does have good forward momentum, and it knows when to speed up and it knows when to slow down, and the characters are likable enough, and Spielberg is just really good at this, that meant that all the pop culture stuff and seeing all these characters mashed together was icing on a cake, as opposed to, a little bit of decent seasoning on a terrible dish, which is what it would have been, I think, in the hands of almost any other director. So yeah, surprise inclusion there. Next up, and this is going to be one of a couple of different films that I will mention, but you will not see any images of or from because it was a Paramount release, and Paramount not only will claim my entire video because of the use of a single still promotional image about the movie I'm talking about, but they will not let down even when I go, hey, this is fair use, could you cut me some slack here? And they still won't. So there'll be a couple of movies on here that, I can't show images of. So despite having enjoyed this movie, Paramount. So that brings us to A Quiet Place. I suspect a lot of people will have this a lot higher on their list. I do like it a lot. It was a very good movie. It was a great conceit. It was definitely a unique movie-going experience because I don't think I've ever been in a theater that quiet, like a theater that had people, like I've been to screenings where like there's nobody else here, but like that was well attended, that was that quiet. And if you missed it in the theater, you kind of missed out on the experience because, knowing that normally in a movie theater, you're hearing people shifting in their seats, you hear the crinkle of a wrapper on candy, you hear somebody lean over and whisper something to whoever. To have all of that gone, to have true dead silence in a theater because everybody watching is afraid to make noise, that was a really cool experience. Like I said, it's lower on my list than I think most other critics will probably have it. For people who don't just have nothing but art films. Because honestly, it started out really weak for me. You can see my review proper for why that is, but it had to overcome a big deficit at the front end. But it did, and it's just a really good execution of this whole concept. All right, next up, we get to start talking animated films, and we are going to begin with Teen Titans Go to the Movies. I know a lot of people don't like Teen Titans Go, especially people who like the previous Teen Titans animated series, which actually I didn't like all that much, so I never minded Teen Titans Go. But Teen Titans Go to the movies is really fun and really funny and surprisingly coherent in terms of keeping a central narrative going, and it's got a decent target when it comes. There's plenty to be making fun of with superhero movies right now, and it does a really good job. And I thought it was a lot of fun, and I liked the music, and the closing joke I thought was just killer. I mean, I love that joke. This is some surprisingly dark humor in addition to all the obvious fart jokes, and I actually didn't even mind those, and usually I hate fart jokes. So yeah, this was, we didn't get a Lego movie this year. This felt like what we got instead, and it's not that far off from the same level of quality. So moving up from that, we are going to go to another animated film. This one did not appear in theaters. Don't care. My list, my rules. So, Constantine, City of Demons. DC animated films really got back to form this year. I was super impressed, to be honest. Especially for how inconsistent DC animation has been for a while now. This was really good. Matt Ryan back as Constantine again. That's an automatic, plus right there. Visually, it was really well put together. I loved the mood and the tone and the theming and the sacrifices going on. It was just awesome. I mean, this is basically anything that I would want from a Constantine movie. It's all there. The nature of his sort of relationship with people and with the supernatural and everything going on with the demons and some horrific imagery, and the fact that there's no way that this can be a completely cleanly happy ending because that's not the world Constantine lives in. Oh man, this was really good. Next up, we come to number 6, and this one is a movie that, again, I think for some other people might be a little bit higher up, but it deserves all the praise it gets. And anyone who wants to put this as their number 1, go for it. No harsh words from me on that. So, Black Panther, Wakanda was awesome. The residents of Wakanda were awesome. Shuri was awesome. Okoye was awesome. M'Baku was epically awesome. T'Challa is a great lead. Killmonger's a terrific villain. Claw was a lot of fun. It's so well put together, and I absolutely get why it became the cultural phenomenon that it did. And I have nothing bad to say about it. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. There was just other things that I enjoyed a little bit more, connected with me personally a little bit more, hit my buttons a little bit harder. But this was... Marvel didn't even have to do a great job for this to have still been a good movie and a big hit. But they did a great job on this. So let's get up into the top 5. Number 5, The Death of Superman. Yes, not only another DC animated film, but a DC animated film set in the continuity that I usually hate, the DC animated one based off the New 52, and adapting a comic book story that I don't really like. How is this so good? I'm serious. And this goes right up there alongside Batman Assault on Arkham, comparing that to the Suicide Squad movie, comparing this to Batman v Superman. How are the live action movies getting their lunch eaten so hard by these animated adaptations? Because this does everything that when it came to the Death of Superman, that Batman v Superman failed to do. It established the value of Superman as a hero and also the perception of his value within the world that he existed in. even though I had never connected to this version of Superman particularly, they still sold him well enough that in this movie alone, I got it. And I felt the loss. And they did just such a good job leading up to it, building up to it, building him as a character, his importance, his vitality, why it was important that he would choose to sacrifice himself in this manner. It was so good. Didn't love this version of Lex Luthor, but that's literally the only thing I don't love about this movie. It was great. Number 4. I don't usually do documentaries. I don't watch a lot of them. They rarely interest me. But Won't You Be My Neighbor was one of the most uplifting and affirming things I saw in the theater this year. And I am more than thrilled to put it on here. Fred Rogers was an incredible human being, and to see, his life, his progress, his hopes, his doubts laid out, and to see people talk about him, it gives you hope. It gives you hope for people. There was somebody that good. There was somebody that loving. Was he a perfect human being? No, probably not. Nobody can be, but I think you'd be hard-pressed to find another human being who had love, like deep, unabashed love, just for his fellow human beings at the core of almost everything he ever did. Whether you grew up watching Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood or not, I think it's good for your soul to see this movie, and I do highly recommend it. Now, before I get into my top 3, I want to do a little bit of housekeeping. Now, normally, right before I get into the top 3 is when I would do my worst movie of the year and my biggest disappointment. I am going to mention those, but I'm not going to dwell on them because I've got some other things to toss in here as well. So first up, I want to mention a couple of movies from 2017 I didn't see until this year. And I want to mention them quickly because if I had seen them before the year had ended and before I did my list for the 2017 movies, they probably would have been on there. One was The Greatest Showman, which is a movie I know a lot of people have issues with. I recognize it being problematic in the way that it mythologizes a real-life figure who was at best a very complicated shade of gray. I did an entire video talking about that whole concept. I still really enjoyed the movie and I love the music, so sorry. And then additionally, Shape of Water I didn't see before the year ended, and I was so happy when that won Oscar for Best Picture because that was great. That would have been top 2 if not the number 1 spot if I'd seen it before the year had ended. So there's that. I also want to do an honorable mention to the comedy special Nanette, Hannah Gadsby's comedy special. It became a bit of a lightning rod, which, I found to be unfortunate. I found it incredibly powerful. I thought it was... first of all, I did think it was funny. And I also thought it was touching and moving and devastating in a way that I am glad I saw it. I've actually seen it a few more times since then, and I stand by my thoughts on that one. One other honorable mention that I want to do, I'm going to mention my daughter's favorite movie from this year, because she and I go to the movies a fair bit. Whenever it's something that I think, I'm okay with her seeing, and B, I think she'll like. And this one is not on my top 10, and it never really had a shot, but I think I probably like this movie a lot better than most adult audiences did, because I kind of got vicariously to experience it through my daughter's eyes. And not only was this her favorite movie of the year, this is currently her favorite movie, period. And that is A Wrinkle in Time. And I remember coming out of the theater going, I guess that was okay. And she came out wide-eyed and enraptured and in love with the imagination of it, with the connections between the characters, with the focus of love as and finding what's missing in your life as a central theme of the fact that the conflict resolves through emotional connection rather than combat. She loved all of that, and one of the first things she asked me was, when can we buy it? And as soon as it was available, I bought it, and we've watched it together several times since then at home. And yeah, I do appreciate this movie. I still wouldn't say it's great, but I see what she sees in it, and I have an appreciation of it for that reason. I'll also mention really quickly TV. I won't dwell on this, but new TV that was out this year that I really liked was the new She-Ra. I thought it was great. Again, became highly controversial, which is still weird to me, but I thought it was great. I started watching The Good Place for the first time, and I've seen, I'm current through it, so I've seen as much of season 3 as has currently aired. God, I love that show. And Westworld. Apparently season 2 was really divisive. I was shocked to find that out, because I thought season 2 was great. Loved it. So, the dishonorable mentions, really quick. So, worst movie I saw this year, I'll just mention it and move on because I've got my review up on it, and that's Cloverfield Paradox. It's just dumb. And there's no reason for it to be as stupid as it is. I mean, strictly speaking, probably the worst made movie I saw this year was Show Dogs, which, I took my daughter to because she loves dogs, and she did enjoy the movie, but knowing who that was aimed at, I was like, this is dumb, but it's harmless. And then watching Cloverfield, I'm like, this is dumb and insulting because it doesn't know it's dumb. At the very least, Show Dogs knew it was stupid. Now, my biggest disappointment is going to be a little bit odd this year because it's not necessarily the movie, because I'm going to say what the movie is. It's not the film as a whole, necessarily, but it is one specific element of that film that I am incredibly disappointed in, and it's only gotten worse as time has gone on, and that's Deadpool 2. I as a whole, I feel it's an inferior film to the first one in the first place, but the reason it was such a big disappointment for me was for a series and a character that is praised for self-awareness and fourth wall breaking and, just having that understanding of its own genre. The fact that it dipped into one of the most maligned and loathsome tropes of comic books, i.e. women in refrigerators, i.e. the female love interest is killed, raped, or brutalized in order to motivate the male hero into action. The fact that this film did that to Vanessa, to Miranda Baccarin's character, I would have been frustrated with any movie that did that. But for the movie that's supposed to be self-aware, to still do that, it was infuriating. But let's get back to the positive. Top 3. Number 3, Avengers Infinity War. Yo, boy. I did have even though there's some gap in between, I did honestly, when I was first putting this list together, have a hard time figuring out if I was going to put this or Black Panther higher. Ultimately, though, I did know it was going to have to be this because as good as Black Panther was, Black Panther didn't make me cry. This made me cry. So that's usually an easy ticket onto a top 10 list is getting legit tears out of me. So yeah, Infinity War was worth the wait. Thanos lived up to the hype. The action was intense. The threat was real. The loss hit. This really did bring back the memories of when the first Avengers movie came out in, I guess it was 2012. And that feeling of, it shouldn't have been possible for this to work. And not only does it work, it's amazing. And I felt that again here. It shouldn't have been possible for this to work. And it does. And I just love it. Top 2. And I went back and forth, flipping these top 2 over and over and over again as to what was going to get. Because these are 2 very different movies that I like for very different reasons. But this is ultimately how they panned out. So number 2, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. This one had a leg up in a couple of areas. One, I love animation. I love especially visually arresting animation. This has that. I love Spider-Man. He's my favorite superhero. This has 6 versions of Spider-Man. So I've got plenty to go on there. I love stories about finding your own place. I love stories about discovering the potential in yourself. You know, not in a trite, the power was in you all along, but like really making those connections. And this story has that. Man, this was good. Like, there's so much going on, but it never loses sight of Miles, and it is Miles' story, unquestionably, from start to finish. He's great. All the alternative Spider characters are great. His dad's great. This version of, oh God, I don't even want to say who it is. One of the villains, the particular iteration of one of the villains we get is great. The version of Aunt May we get is great. Like, everything is just so good, and it's so cool to watch, and Miles is so endearing. Oh man, I just loved it. It didn't quite crack the number 1 though, because the number 1 was from a movie I saw fairly early in the year. In a way, it bears at least in terms of my experience of how it got its number 1 spot, it bears a certain resemblance to Get Out, which was my number 1 movie from last year. Which is that I saw it relatively early in the year, and it kept worming its way back into my head. Like, every couple of weeks, I'd find myself thinking about this movie again. And not because, like, man, this thing's now really bugging me, but, like, just, my brain demanded that I think about it more. And so, can't show you a picture because it's a Paramount release, but Annihilation. Annihilation is everything that I want in sci-fi based horror. Because so often sci-fi horror is just horror classic set in space. It rarely takes proper advantage of science fiction concepts. This does. The horror in this is visceral at times, is brutal at times, but it's also existential. It requires a lot of thought on your part to even grasp what's going on, to get the full concept of exactly what makes this so horrifying. It's visually stunning. It is gorgeously grotesque at times. Some of the visuals in this film are amazing. It is a true step up from an already great debut, because it's the second film from Alex Garland, who did Ex Machina, which I also really liked. The performances are solid. The visuals are amazing. The progression is incredible. The way concepts are given, they're given visually. There's not a ton of exposition here. It's largely just showing you, and you have to figure out what it is you're seeing on your own. And I feel like there's just enough information given that you can figure it out. But it's also not about figuring out the logistics of everything, because it's all thematic. It's got all these themes going about evolution, about change, about refinement, about personhood. Oh man. It's not for everybody. Yeah, I was about to say, if you haven't seen it, go see it. The thing is, there have been a lot of people that friends who or people I've known who said, what was the best movie you saw this year? And I tell them, like, I'm going to tell you what it is, but I'm also not going to recommend you watch it because I know you well enough and you won't like it. Annihilation is not everybody's cup of tea, but it was exactly my cup of tea. And it was delicious. So that's my list. Best movies of 2018. What is your top 10 or top 5 or top 1 or whatever? Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. A whole bunch of stuff you can do there too, because there's buttons and links, including one to the Patreon. If you're feeling generous, it would be immensely appreciated. But if you don't want to, there's other links as well. Check those out. You don't even want to do that? That's okay too, because at the end of the day, folks, you're the council. I just run the meetings. And until next time, this council is adjourned.